This meeting is being recorded.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to sincerely welcome everybody to the Ashford University Forbes School of Business and Technology SHRM chapter. We are a virtual chapter of the Society for Human Resource Management, also known as SHRM. Our chapter is committed to promoting the exchange of work-related experience between HR professionals, students, and faculty. We are also committed to providing career support to chapter members.
Next slide.
We truly hope that everyone enjoys today's presentation. But first, we need to ensure that you know and understand that by participating in this recorded webinar, all comments and questions will become part of our chapter archive. So please take a moment to read the notice before we continue.
Next slide.
On behalf of the SHRM chapter's leadership team, welcome to today's webinar, titled Alignment Refinement. Our speaker is Eric Bailey. With our leadership team of student officers and faculty advisors, I'd like to welcome you to our human resource community. This SHRM chapter offers free membership to Ashford University alumni and current graduate, as well as undergraduate students and faculty from all degree programs. I would also like to begin this session by thanking our SHRM chapter leadership team, some of whom are present in today's session. My name is Kayla O'Leary. I am the chapter's president, and I will be today's host. I am very pleased to welcome and introduce our guest presenter, Eric Bailey, who will introduce today's topic and session objectives on the next slides. Speaker profile. Eric Bailey is a best-selling author and president of Bailey Strategic Innovation Group, which is one of the fastest growing leadership and law enforcement consulting firms within the United States. Eric has a very unique set of experiences, which also includes helping NFL superstar Larry Fitzgerald pet a rhino, doing barrel rolls in an F-16, and chatting with LL Cool J on the campus of Harvard. Eric created the Principles of Human Understanding, which is a communication methodology based in brain science and psychology. Eric has been featured on Huffington Post and Forbes and works with Google Incorporated, the United States Air Force, LA County, PHXPD, and many more. Eric?
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, to be back with you. And today we're going to talk about this idea of humans' natural desire to win and to compete and to be right, and how that can really lead to frustrations and misalignments. So when we're talking about trying to get things done, oftentimes we find that debating is one of the worst things that we can do. It slows us down the most. And so today we're going to really talk about that, this idea of the trap of debate and how we can really discover alignment. And so I called this session Alignment Refinement, ending the my idea is best war. And if you ever spent any time doing group work, you find that a lot of times we get stuck in this idea that my idea is best. My idea is the one true right idea. And we want to get past it. But as we get started, I wanted to share my favorite quote. And I shared it last time, and I actually share it every time I speak. And it comes from Albert Einstein. And he said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." And this is often misquoted as Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And he never said that. He never defined insanity. He said this. And it means that if we want different results, we need to change the way that we're doing things. Tony Robbins once said, if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always gotten. And that's what I think about this. And so I always like to make my presentations a little bit different, a little more interactive. And so I'm actually going to start with with this exercise in doing some mental math. And so if you're in a place where you can say things out loud, feel free to do it. Everyone's on mute, so don't worry, no one's going to hear you. If you're not, just make sure you're doing it in your head, but we're going to work on this together. So we're going to do some mental math, and simple mental math actually stimulates a part of our brain called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That's that blue area right there in the middle. And the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, when there's stimulation in this part of the brain, it actually lowers our anxiety. It gives us a sense of overall well-being, some emotional health, and less depression. And so whenever you have the opportunity, do mental math, because it actually makes you feel better. Now, what we're going to do is I want you to experience this, and I want you to experience it because whenever I'm working with a group of people, whether it's a keynote presentation or a leadership development workshop or whatever, folks are not at work or not at school. They're not doing the typical job. And so it's inherently stressful working with me because there's all these things piling up. And so I want to take some opportunity to give us a sense of lowered anxiety. So how it's going to work is I'm going to show you a couple numbers here, and all I want you to do is just hold the answer in your head. All right, so I told you it's going to be simple. First one is 50 minus 45. Now, just usually I would ask folks to show their hands who's got it right, but just go and give your computer a nod if you know that answer. And of course, that answer is 5. So for those of you who got it wrong, I apologize. This is probably not the this is a question for you. Kayla, raise your hand on the computer. Well, way to use technology, Kayla. Now, the next one, it's a little bit different. Now, how this is going to work is I'm going to show you a series of numbers. And what I want you to do is I want you to hold on to the running total of these numbers as we go. All right. So as it goes, we're going to have 1,000 and then 1,020, 1,050. Now, keep the numbers going. I'm going to shut up. Now, you keep that running count going as we go. And then the final number. All right, so again, who's got it right? At this point, probably everyone's like, oh, it's very easy. But it's important to understand, if you said 5,000, you're just like 80% of adults who take this, and you're 100% wrong. You are absolutely wrong. If you don't believe me, we can walk through it again. But 80% of adults will say 5,000, and it's not the correct answer. So if we do it again, I'll do it out loud the entire time. So we have 1,000, 1,020. Do it along with me if you can. 1,050, 2,050. This one's hard. 3,080, and we have 4,080, and then finally 4,100. Now most folks are like, no, it's 4,100. So what's going on? Well, under stress, our brains take shortcuts, and this is really important to understand that when we're taking shortcuts, we actually can step into some mistakes here and there. And so the shortcut that your brain took in this example is you weren't actually doing the math. You were just keeping track of the tens column and the thousands column. And so when the tens column filled up, you just added 1 to the other column you were keeping track of and added 5,000. And so the important thing to understand here is that as we're going through this process, there's a lot of things that are stressful, inherently stressful in our lives. And when we do that, our brains will take shortcuts. In psychology, we call those heuristics. And those heuristics can get us into trouble sometimes. Now, I teach what are called the principles of human understanding, and as we were talking about my book earlier, it expanded from 10 principles to 22 principles. So I broke them down into 4 different categories, and these principles are essentially the brain science and psychology behind leadership and behind communication. And so, obviously, I'm not going to make you sit through a 2 or 3 day lecture to go through all 22 principles. We're not going to do that, but we are going to get a few of them. Okay. And the first one, and the most important one here, is this illusion of certainty, this idea of the illusion of certainty. And what that means is that our brains like to project certainty even when there is none. And that's just what we do as adults. Our brains like to project certainty. So if someone disagrees with us, our brains will lock in and we will hone in on the idea that our idea is right. When we disagree with someone, let's think about politically. We disagree with somebody, well, we get locked into our idea being the one true right idea. And you know this by, if you've ever been in a situation where you've tried to change someone's opinion by delivering facts, logic, and reasoning. Well, what does that do? Does that change their opinion? Of course not. It just actually it cements in their own opinions because they can also find facts, logic, and reasoning. And so this idea that our brains will project certainty is fundamental to understand as we're moving forward. This idea that almost all of us thought that we were right at counting 5,000, that's how it works. Our brains projected certainty. Yes, I'm right. Yes, I know it. But there's something left to learn. And it's important to understand that when you think about learning, the only things in life that we can learn are things that we don't yet know. I'm going to say it again just because it's really important. The only things in life we can learn are things that we don't yet know, which means that when we encounter someone who knows something different than what we know, that is an opportunity to learn. Pretty powerful. All right, so who is this guy? My name is Eric Bailey. I'm the president of Bailey Strategic Innovation Group. I'm a keynote speaker. I'm a facilitator. I'm an author. My book, The Cure for Stupidity, actually just hit #1 on Amazon on 4 or 5 different categories. I'm really excited about it. But I've got this really unique set of experiences that we were talking about earlier. And when I get down to the last one, everyone says, wait, did you say chatting with LL Cool J on the campus of Harvard? Yes. And I'll explain why in a minute. But I want to tell the story because it's fun, it's powerful, but it actually teaches this really cool lesson. So my previous job was I was actually a change management consultant with Kotter International. And if that sounds familiar at all, it's actually named after Dr. John P. Kotter. He's a Harvard professor of 45 years. And I actually got to work with him. I got to meet him. We had breakfast all the time. We had lunch. We considered new ideas. And he wrote the book, or he wrote 20 books on change management. And as part of my year working with him, he invited me to come and sit on one of his executive training courses at Harvard. And he was doing it for the executives of a big international, Fortune 100 company. And so I go there, and I'm on the campus of Harvard University, and I'm sitting there in the classroom, and that's Dr. Kotter there in the middle teaching. And this buzz starts to go around the room, and like all the folks here in this room are making, well into 6 figures, if not into 7-figure salaries. It's a very, very big and important room. And this buzz happens around the room. And word gets out that in the very next classroom over, there's another executive training course, but this one had a couple of very special guests, Paul Gassot, Chris Paul, LL Cool J, and Channing Tatum. And so they were actually learning how to use their celebrity to help business and to run businesses. So we're here in our training course, and they're right next door. Well, my mother-in-law is a huge LL Cool J fan. And if I could, fan is not quite enough of a word for what she is. Like she would like to marry LL Cool J. He just doesn't know it yet, right? And so she's a huge fan of his. Well, at the time that I was in this class, and he was in that class right next door, my mother-in-law, who had gone through a couple of bouts of cancer, was actually at the Mayo Clinic here in Phoenix, Arizona, undergoing a surgery. And so our group takes a break at the same time that their group takes a break. And I've got this buzz of excitement and nervous energy running through me. And I'm like, I need to go and I need to talk to LL Cool J for my mother-in-law. Like, she's literally under the knife right now. She's unconscious, through anesthesia. And this is my opportunity. And so I walk up to him. I go right up to him. That's actually a picture of me talking to him. And one of my friends took a picture, like, I can't believe you're talking to LL Cool J. And so I go up to him and I say, excuse me, Mr. Smith. His name is, James Todd Smith. Excuse me, Mr. Smith. My mother-in-law is a huge fan. I'm like kind of bumbling all over my words because I'm just so nervous and excited. And I'm like, would you mind, saying a message for my mother-in-law? And he said, yes. And so I don't know if it's going to play through the screen share, but I'll play the video. This is what he actually said to me for my mother-in-law.
Luck with your surgery. I wish you the best. Everything will be fine. Just feel good, say a little prayer, and just lay back, relax, and you'll wake up better. Much love. Thanks a lot.
So I don't know if you could hear that or not, but I am the best son-in-law ever. I took the video and I posted it to Facebook, and I tagged my wife in it because my wife was sitting at her bedside waiting for her mom to wake up. And when my mother-in-law woke up, my wife showed her the video, and she immediately passed right back out. I don't know if it was the anesthesia or LL Cool J message, but throughout the entire day, she kept waking up and asking if it was real. And my wife would show her the video and she'd, fall asleep again. And to this day, the only thing she remembers of that day, of that crazy surgery, was dreaming about LL Cool J the entire day. So the point actually is not that I'm just an amazing son-in-law, but I guess I am. But the main point is that connecting with people is not as hard as we pretend it is. And I was walking into that situation just with so much fear and anxiety that I was going to talk to this other human. And when you think about how easy it is for us to actually connect with people and how hard we make it, I want to remind you that making human connection is actually a very simple process. When you're at the grocery store, just try to say hi to people, make eye contact. It's a surprisingly, we're losing this ability. And I want to remind you that it's possible and we need to continue doing it because that is how we're going to change the world. All right. Now, we talk about connecting with people. There's a really interesting poll from about.com, and they asked folks all over the place, what is the worst part about your job? And number one answer is lack of direction. 38% people said lack of direction. Number two, most common was poor communication overall. Number three, poorly communicated change. 12% folks said that. And finally, a lack of recognition. And so when I look at this list, I look at this and I say, okay, number one, well, that's just poor communication. Number two, well, obviously that's poor communication. Number three, yep, that's also poor communication. And number four, that's poor communication. And so when you think about the top 4 reasons that people don't like their job, a whopping 74% of respondents say poor communication. And that's the thing that I think is just absolutely crazy. When you think about that 74% of people say that communication is the reason they don't like their job, it's the worst part of the job, then that's something we can fix. That's something we need to work on. And so why is communication so important in collaboration? Well, there's cool research from Yale University. And if you didn't know me by now, I do a lot of research and I like to share it with you because it's really interesting. But we found is one professor found that some students were getting work done at a different rate as everyone else. And what he found is what the most effective students were getting done, it took about everyone else 10 hours to do. So 1 hour to 10 hours. Most effective folks can get the same amount of work done that it takes you 10 hours to do, it takes them 1 hour to do. Crazy. So that's actually kind of been the foundation of education. Like go train and coach and educate people. They can be as efficient as possible and we get a 10 times improvement on your efforts. Now, just to kind of peek behind the curtain, I was not a 1 hour student. I was more like a 12-hour student. So don't worry, you can still get things done even if you're moving things slowly, because when you think about it, when you look at the research on teams, things get more interesting. So his research goes on to find that what the most effective team can get done in one day, it's not like a 10 times improvement, it's actually different. It takes the average or the worst team 2,000 days to do. And so when you think about the impact of team effort, that's really where there's room for improvement. And so to give a little example, I'm originally from Tacoma, Washington, and in Tacoma, Washington runs the Interstate 5 freeway. And so I-5 runs all the way from Mexico up to British Columbia. And it runs all the way up there on the West Coast. And in Tacoma, Washington, the I-5 freeway takes a hard bend to the right. And that's where that bend here to the right. At that same point, it intersects with this area called the other highway called Highway 16. And Highway 16 makes a really interesting interchange. Well, at this area in I-5, in 1993, the Tacoma City Council decided to add carpool lanes to this stretch of road. And in 1993, they began construction. In 1993, the funny thing is, this project is still under construction. They began the project in 1993, and 26 years later, it's still not done, and still won't be done for another few years. Well, that's what we're talking about when you think about teams not working well together, not collaborating, and you see how long this project can last. There's actually this one road that kind of intersects at Highway 16 called Sprague Avenue, and when they actually got it done, they realized that they were off by 30 feet of elevation. And this, you can see, like if you were to continue driving on Sprague Avenue, you would actually fall off onto the freeway. Like it was crazy what they ended up with. So I've checked the Washington Department of Transportation website, and they found that, or they've announced that this project will finally be done in the year 2022, when it will look like this. It's absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy. So the lesson really is, if we can find a way to lead teams to collaborate, let people connect and communicate, we'll watch the productivity soar. Now, we talk about communicating, collaborating, connecting. It's important to understand that there's this issue that we struggle with. And so when you think about effective people, there's one thing that all of these folks have in common when it comes to getting things done. And they listen much more than they talk. Now, unfortunately, most of us, we talk much more than we listen. And so to combat this, I have this really interesting yet delicate way to teach this reminder that you can use at any time in your day. Just shut up and listen. Sorry if that's a little too bold for you. But it's important to understand, like, when we're arguing with people, it's not that we're trying to actually resolve problems. What happens is we have two people who are arguing the rightness of their idea. Both people think that they're right, but they're just, fighting and fighting and fighting. Now, what would happen if you just shut up and listen? Well, you might find that that person has a valid point or a reasoning behind their idea. But what happens is when we're in an argument, we're not listening. We're just waiting for our turn to talk. And that's what gets us in trouble. It stops becoming about trying to actually listen. It starts becoming about trying to win. And when we're trying to win, we don't need to resolve anything. But when you think about this idea, what happens when we're trying to win? What happens when we win? What does the other person become? A loser. And how is your organization better for having a loser in it? It's not. How is your family better for having a loser in it, or your spouse, right? It's not about winning and losing. It's about trying to solve problems. But this is what we do all the time. We're trying to win. We stop caring about actually resolving the problems. And the reason this happens is because of who we are as a species. A long time ago, it's not about the way they were trying to solve problems. It's about competing. When you think about it, you don't need to outrun the bear. You've always just needed to outrun the other person, right? That's how we've been built. We don't need to survive. You don't need to outrun the bear. You need to outrun somebody else, and the bear will get them. And so we've actually been inbuilt this idea of competition. All right. Now, as we're going through this, I really want to explore this difference, this distinction here between purpose and process. Now, purpose is the result that we want to achieve, or the why, and process is the method by which we get there, or the how. So once again, purpose is the why, process is the how. And when you think about purpose and process, think about this. A boss who focuses a lot on the purpose, we call that boss a leader, because they're leading us to something bigger. A boss that focuses on the process or the method or the how, we call them a micromanager. Now, not just a manager, a micromanager, because the how is the method by which to get there. And if a boss tells you all of the ways to achieve your job, then they're not allowing you the freedom to actually do your job. And so just take that with you as you start to go into your careers, thinking about how often folks get stuck behind a micromanager and how it makes you feel. That's not what we need to be doing, right? All right. So purpose and process. The way that I'm going to tell you this story is by telling you a very personal story with me and my wife. Actually, I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to go to this idea of Laurel and Yanny. So when we do you remember last summer, this idea of Laurel Yanny was kind of swept over everything? Well, Laurel Yanny was this idea that there's this word on vocabulary.com, and these high school students went to go click on the little speaker button that had people had the reading out. And the woman clicked on it, and she didn't hear the nice baritone Laurel that was recorded. She heard Yanny, which freaked people out. Freaked her out, at least. And so she sent the link to her best friend, and her friend also had the same vocabulary assignment, and she clicked on it and she heard Laurel. So that's strange. And so maybe it's your computer, my computer. That's bizarre. So they went back to school the next day and they said, okay, what did you hear? What did I hear? All right, let's sit down, same place, same computer, same desk, and they click the button. And one of them heard Laurel and one of them heard Yanny. it was crazy. And so, like, of course, they got really animated and excited, which caused a scene, and a lot of folks gathered around the scene. And as they were going through it, half the people heard Laurel and half the people heard Yanni, which is kind of crazy. And so one of the people in the group, they decided to put this sound clip on Reddit, which is a social link website, and it started getting crazy on Reddit. And then some celebrity put it on Instagram, and then bam, it was everywhere. So I actually have the sound clip that I would like for you to hear. It'll replay 6 times. But I want you to think about what you hear and what you don't hear. Okay, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but here we go.
Laurel, 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 Laurel.
So the crazy thing is, half of us probably heard Yanni, half of us heard Laurel, and when you think about this, so I hear Laurel when I hear it, but the crazy thing is, other people are hearing other things. And so actually, if you have the ability to, why don't you jump into the chat and just share what you heard? Did you hear Laurel or did you hear Yanni on this one? I'm just going to give a quick little poll, Laurel or Yanni. A couple of Yannis. There's a Laurel, 2 Laurels and a Yanni so far, 2 and 2. Someone heard Yaley. Okay, that works, Laurel. All right, Yanni. So here's the thing. It looks just about half and half. Maybe Yanni's leading a little bit. But what I want you to process is, what do you think when you hear that other people heard the other thing? Like, how could you possibly? And that's the thing I want to focus on, is this idea that we process the world differently. And so one thing that I hear all the time is, you're joking. How could you possibly hear it that way? And that's the thing I want us to focus on, this idea of how could you possibly. This phrase actually permeates all of our conversations every day. And so how could you possibly not know that? How could you possibly think that was okay? This is a big one that we hear in HR. How could you possibly think that was okay? How could you possibly hear it that way? And the interesting thing about this idea, this phrase, how could you possibly, is the subtext is, you're an idiot. And we never say those words. We never say them out loud, but we think them, don't we? We think, you're an idiot. How could you possibly? And when you start talking to folks and you have this reaction to them and they get defensive, well, the reason they're getting defensive is because you've just insulted their intelligence. You didn't do it outright, but you did in your mind, and that subtext came through loud and clear. And so it's important that we understand that as we're doing this process, as we're communicating with people who hear things or perceive things differently than we do, that we need to check the idea that the way that we see it is correct. And so sometimes we get in these ideas, like you perceive something one way and I perceive it the other way. Sometimes we get stuck in a debate. And so when you think about debate in a practical purpose, whenever we debate, we're debating process, not purpose. We're debating the rightness or wrongness of my idea versus your idea. And what happens when we do that is we actually lose the ability to connect, because we stop focusing on actually solving any given problem. We start trying to win again. And the way to solve this, the way to get beyond it, is to find an alignment of purpose. And the way to do that is to find common desired results. And that's something that we don't often do, is looking for common desired results. And it's actually a very easy process to do this. It's asking yourself 2 questions. Question 1, what do I truly want out of this? Let's say that we're in an argument on which freeway to take to get from one place to another. Well, we get caught up in, well, we should go this way. No, we should go that way. Well, we're in a debate on which method to get there. We don't really care about why it matters at all. And we get caught in that. What we end up doing is trying to tell the other person that they're a loser, right? We try to tell them that they're wrong, that they're an idiot for thinking their way. And if we do that and we ask that question, what do I truly want? I truly want to get to XYZ location. I want to get there. That's my ultimate purpose. And if I get there, that's a victory for me. That's what I'll call success. How I get there doesn't matter as much. And a lot of times we need to check ourselves in that question, because what if what I truly want is, I want to get there on time, or I want to get there as quickly as possible. And that's what we want to catch ourselves, because that usually fuels a lot of our debates. Well, I think this way's faster. Well, that way's faster. Well, if getting there is what I truly want, then getting there quickly shouldn't matter as much. Okay. That's tough for us to do, is let go of that idea of what I truly want. Now, the second thing we can do is ask the question, what do they want? And this question requires quite a bit of empathy. We actually need to get inside of their thinking to understand, what do they want? So why is this person advocating for this point of view? And when we do that, we have to let go of our idea as just an idea, as a method, and focus more on the purpose, the why behind it. This will solve almost any debate, right? Because your perception is not their perception. So it's important to understand that almost any debate can be solved by finding mutual purpose, by listening to them. Now, when I say almost any debate, I mean almost any debate. And things get crazy when I say this, because people say, well, yeah, Eric, that's not true. What about the border wall? You can't solve the border wall debate with this simple tactic. Well, yes, you can. And I'm going to right now. So before anyone gets really, really uncomfortable, we're not going to be doing a political debate right here, but we are going to explain how debate can be solved by finding mutual purpose. So on one side of the argument, folks say we need to build a border wall. Okay, that's one side of the argument. The other side of the argument is, very simply, no, we don't. We're not going to build a border wall. Well, the border wall is a method. The border wall is a process by which to achieve something. The border wall is a how. And when we're debating how. If we let go of the idea of, border wall, the method, let go of that and dive down deeper to the level of purpose. Well, folks who are for the border wall, why? Why do they care? Well, I've spent some time listening to folks who argue for the border wall, and they say, we want national security. Can we all agree that national security is a good thing? Yeah, of course. Sure thing. Well, folks who argue against the border wall, I've sat down, I've asked them, why do you argue against it? What do you care about? What's the real thing? Well, we want fiscal responsibility for our country. Okay, well, can we all agree that fiscal responsibility is a good thing? Yes. And when we find that mutual purpose, we realize that we are on the same team. Now, the method is still up for debate. Sure, we could spend all of our time debating the method, or we can go a level deeper and we can try to find a creative solution that allows us to have fiscal responsibility and provides us national security. And there are probably a million different ways to solve that problem. But what happens is we actually never get down to the level of solving that problem, and we stay at that top level of how and process and debate. And when you think about this, it doesn't need to be on a national level. When you get in arguments with people, we stay at that how level. What would it look like if you took a step back and said, what do I truly want? And what do they truly want? All of a sudden, we're solving creative problems with each other by connecting, collaborating because of alignment. All right. Almost any debate can be solved by listening and finding mutual purpose. Oh, can someone please turn off their phone here? I'm just kidding. All right, I'm talking about distraction. Sometimes technology gets in the way. Now, if you didn't know by now, sometimes I take things a little deep and get a little heavy, but I'll try to bring it back with some levity. So that was my idea of a joke. All right, let's talk about some distraction, because technology is this wonderful thing, but it's oftentimes getting in the way, especially this thing that's in front of you right now that we call a connected device, a phone. I ask people, like, what does this device connect you to? And people say, oh, it connects me to the world, it connects me to people, it connects me to... I think all of that is just marketing talk. Those are people who are trying to sell you phones or sell you data. These devices connect us to the internet. And when I argue against, I connect with people all over the world. Like, yes, these devices can be used to make connections to people. But more often than not, what happens is we use these devices as shields to prevent us from connecting with other people who are physically around us. We use these things as shields from being bored. We use these devices to protect us. And we're losing the ability to connect with other humans. And if you don't believe me, let's take this idea, or take this challenge. I would like you to, the next time you go to a grocery store, if you even still go to grocery stores, I would like you to try to make eye contact with 10 adults for longer than 2 seconds each. I guarantee you, you will not be able to do it, because what's going to happen is an adult will look at you, they will see you looking at them, and they will look away really quickly. Like we're losing this ability to make eye contact, to be present with people because of this distraction. And the crazy thing is children, though, the children like in the shopping cart, they'll stare at you all day long. Like they'll look at you and stare at you because you're interesting. You look unlike anyone else they've ever seen, because that's what happens. Children are curious. So this idea of distraction, technology distraction, I want to show you just a couple of examples of real people in real situations not connecting. This is a couple on a date. This is a couple of public works guys is waiting. I love this one because it's like, oh, look how close this couple almost is. Like they're physically touching, but they're both on their own devices. And the closest that they're going to get is one of them finding something interesting, some news article or something that they're reading, and they're going to say to the other one, oh, hey, look at this. And the other one's going to say, okay, yeah, hold on. Okay, yeah, what? And then they'll finish what they're doing before they actually look at the other one. And it's like they're in completely separate spaces, but they're physically connected. This one I really enjoyed. This is people are literally sitting underneath these communication devices and not communicating. But I always do this piece, and people say, Eric, but can't I just glance at my phone? What about glancing? Glancing's got to be okay. Well, there's some cool research from University of Texas, and they found that the mere presence of cell phones on our desk reduces our cognitive capability. The mere presence of cell phones makes us dumber. And when you think about what does that mean? Well, there's two reasons this happens. The first reason is when your phone is on your desk, you actually have to allocate mental resources to not look at the phone. You actually have to stop. You can't give 100% of your attention to what you're trying to do because you're trying to not look at the phone. It's like, don't press the red button. What are you thinking? Red button, red button, red button, right? Okay, number two reason. When you glance at your phone, your brain switches to all of the things that you would be doing on that phone. And when you think about how crazy that is, like it doesn't just switch back when you look back, because think about the last time you walked into a room and you're like, why did I walk into this room? Oh, and then your brain eventually catches up and you're back there, but it takes mental resources to switch tasks from one to the other. Another thing that I want to talk about is that people always ask me, Eric, I wish I had more time. It feels like time is shrinking. And yes, I'm extremely proud of that graphic that shrunk as I say shrinking. Anyway, Eric, time is shrinking. Well, this happens because, and when you get out and doing the actual work of HR, you will find that this is the case. And you may actually think that these numbers are too small. But research found that 89% of workers waste at least a half an hour a day. 89% waste half an hour a day on technology. And that's not all at once. It's like 15 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 2 minutes there, adds up. But you're right, that does not seem, 30 minutes does not seem like a lot because time continues to shrink. And they found that 62% of employees waste at least 1 hour a day on technology. 1 hour a day, that's 5 hours a week. That's 20 hours a month on technology. And so people say, yeah, I wish I had more time. Well, there it is. Like, what would you do with an extra 20 hours a month? Like, oh, you can get all of the projects done you wanted to get done. You could, I don't know, leave work on time. Like people are staying extra hours. Well, there's the time. Find it, right? And that's what I want to get to, is this idea that the time is there. We just need to find it, okay? Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to walk you through this thing called the Stroop Test. Now, this is going to be one of those examples where I need you to do your best to participate out loud in whatever space you are. If you need to mumble it under your breath because people are listening to you, that's fine. Mumble it under your breath. But I want you to do this. This is a psychological test, but I am not going to be evaluating you. Don't worry. How it's going to work is I'm going to show you a shape. And all you have to do is say the shape out loud. Just say the color of the shape out loud. Okay, so in this case, just say blue. No need for periwinkle or light blue or anything. Just blue will work. Okay, so go ahead and do it now. Just kind of practice. I can't hear you, but I'm assuming that you took the bold step and you did it out loud. All right, now it's actually not going to be one shape. It's actually be a series of shapes. But all the shapes will be the same color. So go ahead and do this one here. All right, orange, yellow, both work. Now, how it's going to work is I'm going to process through all of these slides, and I want you to just keep saying out loud the color of the shapes. And as we go, you'll get the hang of it. I'll start to go faster and faster and faster, and we'll ask some questions afterwards, okay? Here comes the first one. Ah, I bet you got that one wrong. All right, let's keep going. All right. So I'm guessing by this point, many of you have stopped trying. But want to ask you, why was that so hard? Why was that so hard? And most folks, when I ask that question, if you want to drop it in the comments, you're welcome to. But most folks, they say, well, because I was reading. And to which I say, I never asked you to read. I asked you to just simply say the color of the shapes. Now, I understand that the shapes were letters. The letters happen to make words. Those words happen to be color words. And the color words did not match the shape. I get it. I'm not sorry for that. Sorry, not sorry, right? But here's the thing. If anyone has ever had a 3-year-old, they would have done infinitely better at this than you did. They would have been able to get every single color because they were not encumbered by reading the color of the shapes. And I see a couple people say the speed was the problem. Well, if you weren't reading, the speed wouldn't have been a problem. Identifying colors is a very simple process. But what happened is you get distracted by reading. And so reading was a distraction. And so what you actually saw was this idea that I call the destruction from distraction. Destruction from distraction. And so you saw cognitive decline because of the distraction of reading. You were like, purple, blue, green, white, pink. And you could see your brain grinding through it. And you got there eventually, but it was a grind. You saw your cognitive capability decline. And the point that I want to make here is that constantly debating the rightness or wrongness of an idea is a distraction from solving the problem. Constantly debating is actually making it harder for us to have cognitive resources to solve problems. And when we think about how often we debate, how often we disagree, and how often we do not listen to other people's ideas, especially when they differ from ours, you can see why we're in this mess that we're in. Why communication and collaboration is one of the biggest issues for every single person in an organization. And as you go through, you can start to see how learning that other people see the world differently, this whole idea of the Laurel Yanny, will get us to a place where we can align better and faster. Now, if we can learn to listen and understand, especially through difference of opinion, we will be able to absolutely change the world. Thank you very much. And I think that we're going to open it up to questions. Are we doing questions or are we doing closing first?
Why don't we go ahead and do some questions first, and then we'll wrap up with the closing.
All right. So does anyone have any questions? And this, you can use this little nugget for yourself as you're formulating and typing those questions. The average adult takes about 14 seconds to think of a question when someone says, does anyone have any questions? So if you're ever facilitating a large group, just ramble for at least 15 seconds and eventually a question will come up. What oftentimes people do is they say, anyone have any questions? And it's quiet for 5 seconds. And like, oh, I guess no one has any questions. So I just get in the habit of just rambling for a little bit to allow those questions to come in. But someone said, I feel like I will have many, but your brain. Yeah, I'm sorry. I do have this tendency to break people's brains. So I apologize for that, Kayla. But hopefully it'll be unbroken here soon.
I have a question, Eric. This is Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
If, in my case, I have HR consulting clients, how would you suggest, if we're dealing with managers from an HR standpoint or even employees, how would you suggest that we broach this subject with them? I'm just thinking of conversations I just had yesterday with a client where they're arguing about some things about the process.
So if you're in a position where you're kind of facilitating that conversation, or you can be in a position where you're facilitating that conversation, it's important that you, armed with the idea of finding mutual purpose, if you can discern between purpose and process, then you can help them understand that. And so you can even ask that question, okay, so we're going to have a conversation here, but just answer some questions for me. What do you truly want in this side of the argument? And you ask one person, what do you truly want? Like, well, I want this. Okay. Why do you want that? Let me ask you differently. Why are you so passionate about that? And if you can like help them distill down to their why, and then ask the other side of the argument, ask them those same questions and distill down to the why, and then ask them to respond to the other person's why. What you usually find is that, oh, that makes sense to me. I wouldn't arrive at that same conclusion, but it makes sense to me. And that's one thing that I found helps people process through. Now, understand that they are still going to hold on to this idea that their idea is the best idea. But what you want to do is, once you get down to that level of mutual purpose, then you say, okay, does your idea achieve does it achieve the mutual purpose? Yes or no? Does your idea achieve the mutual purpose? And if they're both yes, then we shouldn't care about which one we do. Are there other ideas that can achieve this mutual purpose? Yes. And so kind of help them walk through that process of realizing that, okay, oh, both ideas will work. Now, can I let go of my idea enough to try someone else's idea, and those sorts of things? And so as you're walking people through, help them down this process, because if you're not caught in the middle of a debate, you're not going through the fight or flight response. You're not having this destruction of distraction that they are because of the debate, and you're able to clearly walk them through it, and you can help them through.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Jessica, great question. Is this the reason for the statistics at the beginning, teams being more effective, the 1 to 2,000 ratio? Absolutely. Absolutely. And this happens quite a bit because this is actually the reason that people will not buy into new ideas or ideas that weren't theirs. And so what'll happen is they'll give, half effort, or they'll sit back and wait for it to fail, or they'll kind of subvert and try to do their own ideas on the side. All these things will happen just to slow everything down. And one thing is, when you get caught in this idea of my idea versus your idea, which one is right, which one's better, you can see that if I think that my idea is better and you don't take the time to understand why I care about my idea, and we go with your idea, well, the entire time around the process, I feel like I'm a loser. I've lost. And so I'm not going to give my full energy to your idea. And in fact, I'm going to find ways to prove that your idea is still wrong. And you can see how these things really start to slow the process of collaboration and achievement down. From Kayla, comment that you're experiencing it firsthand. Communication is key. It causes such a disconnect, and to be connected is so very important. How, as someone with no authoritative position, can you bring together teams and managers, etc.? That is a fantastic question, Kayla. I love that you called out with no authoritative position, because I don't think we talked about this last time, but when you think about moving a group of people forward, I want to call the distinction between leadership and management. And so management has everything to do with authoritative power. You were assigned some position, and because of that position, you have this power or authority to tell people to do things, and they should follow you. Well, leaders, on the other hand, are simply people that are followed. We use this word interchangeably with leadership management all the time, but I want to make the distinction between a manager is someone who's given a position or earned a position, but because of their position, they have some authority based on their position. Whereas a leader is just someone who has someone that's following them. So as someone with no positional power, you can still have leadership authority over a group of people because you're going in the right direction that they want to go in. And so how can you lead folks out of this quagmire of debate? Is you can be the voice of reason, and you don't need to do it publicly and broadly. So let's say that you're sitting in a meeting and you hear this debate going, and you're like rolling your eyes because it's the same debate they've been having for 2 years. Well, what you can do is you can pull someone aside, and you can do it one-on-one, and you can have those conversations with them one-on-one and with them individually, and you can slowly just start to ask them the questions and kind of let them come to their conclusion that they need to come to, right? So say, okay, why are you so passionate? Basically, the same conversation I was just talking with Dr. Frost is what do you truly want in this? And is it more important for you to win, or is it more important to solve the problem? And you can kind of walk them through, and you can kind of lead from behind the scenes. And what you'll see is that people will start to come together, and maybe they'll give you credit for it, maybe they won't, but you'll get this wonderful practice of how to lead people beyond their own rightness or wrongness, their own desire to compete and to win. And that's very, very powerful. Let's see, another question came in. Do I suggest, or do I ever suggest that teams remove their phones from the equation at work or meetings? Let me answer that piece first before I read on. So I'm going to answer it in 2 different ways. One, from my personal experience as a speaker and someone who facilitates meetings, I never ask people to remove their phones or put away their phones for one specific reason. Because I found that people don't like giving critical feedback to speakers or facilitators or presenters. I don't know why. Maybe it's that position of power type of thing. People assume a position of power. So I usually don't get feedback on my work. And so unless you're like, hey, wow, that was wonderful, you did a great job. Like, I'll get a couple people say that, but that doesn't actually help me improve. What I've done is I've paid attention to the people that I'm speaking to. And if people are on their phones, that's an indication to me that I'm not reaching them. And so I've actually used phones and devices as a measure of my success as a speaker or as a facilitator. So that's just a personal thing. If you end up doing a lot of facilitation or a lot of speaking, I would encourage you to use that as your barometer, because people who are disengaged or disconnected will be on their phones a lot more often. And that's just the nature of the beast. So that's my first answer. Second answer, if you know that having phones out and people being distracted on technology in meetings is a problem, absolutely you are allowed to put a ban on phones in meetings. There's a couple organizations that, mainly in healthcare, but folks walk around with their laptops, and everyone has their laptop open in meetings. Everyone wants to pretend that they're taking notes, but they're just flipping back and forth in email, and they're going to speak up when things are irrelevant. To me, if you're going to a meeting and you can tune out for 40% of the meeting, why go to the meeting? Like, it's completely a waste of time then. So I would encourage you, if you're that type of person or that type of situation, have someone else on your team give you the Cliff's Notes version afterwards, and just stay getting work done. So that's my thing. I would prefer, if people are going to be in a meeting, I hate wasting time in meetings. So I would always encourage folks to, let's be fully present in this meeting. If you need to step out, by all means, please step out. But if you're going to be on your devices and not being present, then don't attend, because you're going to waste our time. Another weird thing that I have about meetings is, do you ever notice that meetings are always exactly 60 minutes or 30 minutes? And what are the chances that every single meeting, every topic that we've ever had a debate is exactly like an hour or 30 minutes? Well, it's not because that's actually the amount of time. It's just that's the default on Microsoft Outlook. And it's crazy that we've kind of used this arbitrary amount of time, and then we fill up the rest of the time. So I'm an advocate for 45-minute meetings or 20-minute meetings because, you know, if we can get it done earlier, by all means, let's get it done. Let's get it wrapped up. Let's move on to the next thing. So you can use that if you want to. People will freak out at first, but you'll still get the same amount of stuff done, and you'll have more time in your life. All right, there was another part to your question. How do I assess the issue of such a distraction and encourage teams to focus and engage in order to be more effective and productive? You're welcome to use some of this content talking about the University of Texas study about phones on our desk makes us dumber, about time shrinking and the amount of time that people waste in their day. You're welcome to use that data. I've found that's very compelling for folks. Another thing to do is be humble and vulnerable with it. So for me, I still struggle with technology, like distraction. I'm still distracted with technology. And so understanding that there's no quick solution. Like, it's like, oh, I'm better than you. I know that you're wasting your time. Like, I'm struggling with this too. And I think that we can be more productive if we all agree that we leave our phones at our desks when we go to meetings, or if we try to reduce the amount of time that we're on our phones. And there's a bunch of digital well-being apps. I think now both Apple and Android have kind of built-in digital well-being. And so when you think about using those apps, it says, here's how long your screen is on. Here's how long you're using these apps. And you can actually set these limits on how much you're using, you know, Instagram or Facebook. And the little joke that I tell all the time is, hey, did you go to the gym today? Like, no, I did, 2 miles scrolling Instagram on the Instagram treadmill. That's what we're dealing with is it's so easy to get sucked into the infinite number of things that can be done on our phones that we're not getting things done. And we're getting this really cool dopamine boost, right, from being on our phones. Oh, someone liked my thing. Someone commented on my thing. Whoa, I got a new email. And we're getting these little shots of dopamine that doing our actual work, which does not usually give us the same dopamine release, it becomes less appealing. And so folks tend to like, oh, I'm a little bit bored. Let me sit back in my chair and get on my phone. And you can see how quickly we can lose time. So addressing that is pretty powerful. All right, I think that was the last question. I didn't see any others scroll through. Does anyone else have any other questions before we wrap it? I'm not going to wait 14 seconds because we only have 2 minutes. I think we have to do a closing. So thank you guys so much for having me back. I'm really excited. I think I'm coming back again in October.
Yeah.
So even more content, and we'll have some more fun, and I'll probably break more brains, Kayla.
Okay. Thank you very much, Eric. Very enlightening presentation, and it was nice to have you build on what you talked about in your last presentation. And I'll turn it over to Shannon now, if she is off mute.
I am. Hi.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
As a virtual organization, the chapter uses Zoom to provide educational webinars. And we also facilitate a chapter LinkedIn group page to support networking. You can join our chapter by clicking on Join Us at the top of our website. If you don't already have a profile on LinkedIn, we can share tutorials on how to get started. Our LinkedIn group page is where members will primarily engage with one another. Once your request is approved, please start by posting your bio and introducing yourself. Requirements for membership include an interest in HR and an affiliation with Ashford University. So ensure your LinkedIn profile shows your affiliation, student, faculty, alumni, etc. The Events tab on our chapter webpage links you to our upcoming events, and the archive of previous webinars are uploaded to the chapter's YouTube channel if you are not able to join us live or if you want to revisit a session. If you have questions or comments, click on Contact Us on our webpage. You will be directed to the page where you can send us a message. You can also email us directly at forbes-sherm-chapter@ashford.edu. Please feel free to offer suggestions on webinar topics. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you all, and thank you, Eric Bailey, for the outstanding job he has done in this presentation today. We all got so much out of it. And again, thank you all for joining us.